What is going on, everybody? Happy Wednesday. Welcome back to another episode of Uplift TV. We share the story, strategies, and inspiration to help you unscript yourself and create a life that you really love. I'm your host, Hayden Humphrey, uplifter and leadership coach. I work with service-based, purpose-driven solopreneurs who want to unscript themselves, create more time, energy, and freedom in their lives and businesses. And y'all, I am super psyched about the topic today. We're going to be talking about visioning and goal setting, and specifically how visioning can rapidly elevate your business and really everything else that you're up to. This is a topic that is near and dear to my heart, partly because it's a big portion of the work that I do with people directly, so I can see the impacts on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis. And also because I've seen the impact and power that visioning can have personally in my own life, in my business, inside of my relationships, and everything else that I'm up to. And I think creating a really extraordinary life and business, one that's outside of the script, one that's a direct reflection of who you are authentically, requires visioning, and it requires visioning correctly. So today I'm going to talk a bit about what is it, what do I mean by visioning, talk about why it's important, why doing it correctly is important, some places where people tend to slip up or make mistakes when it comes to visioning, and then we'll talk about how to start to actually implement this, give you some practical tips, strategies, and tools that you can use to start visioning and making a difference today, this week. Like I mentioned, visioning, and really how I see it, is the process of clearly imagining the desired results and experiences that you want, as if they were occurring right now. So taking the time, creating the space to be able to sit down and imagine, get in touch with both the results that we want to create in our businesses, in our lives, more clients, more money, more time, more energy, and also the experiences. Meaning, how is it going to feel to have this thing? Or, said another way, how do I want to feel? And what would the results need to be to tell me that I'd created that experience? And that experience versus results piece is something that we'll talk about later, in that it's something that I think people tend to make mistakes with or could be doing more powerfully. But fundamentally, that's really what visioning is. When I talk about visioning, it's the process of clearly defining and imagining desired results and experiences as if they were occurring right now. That's also the important piece, right now, not in the future, not 10 years from now, imagining us having it right now. Why is this important? Why is this act of imagining and clearly articulating and defining what we want from a results perspective and experiences perspective, why is that important? A couple different reasons. I think the first one is that it helps you shift from a life by default to a life by design. And here's what I mean by that. All of us, when we grew up, based on our circumstances, based on who our parents were, based on who our community was, we were given a set of scripts and stories about what life was supposed to look like, how the world worked, who we were as people, our place in the world. And what ends up happening is, although we get older, that core set of scripts and stories, you could also think about them as instructions, that core set of instructions doesn't change. So the way that we make decisions is predictable. And it tends to be that, unless we intervene and do something different, what we created last year, in a sense, is what we will create next year. This is what I mean when we talk about a life by default. You're not clear on why you're making the decisions that you're making. You're letting your underlying unconscious, subconscious programming make decisions for you. And when you do vision, or when you do set goals, you're doing it based on what's already happened. You're doing it based on the past. And when you set goals in vision based on what's happened in the past, all you do is you just take your past and you put it into your future. And if how things are going right now aren't ideal, if you'd like them to be different, it creates this endless loop, this cycle. And so breaking up that cycle through correctly visioning, really powerfully visioning, actually allows you to move out of this default mode of making decisions and setting goals and really step into becoming the creator of your own life, actually designing your own life intentionally. So it's the first reason why visioning is super duper important, actually breaking out of default, choosing more from design. Second reason is that specificity breeds speed. And here's what I mean by this. Imagine that you were going to go visit a friend in Texas, say, and I only told you that this friend lived in Texas. Now imagine how long it would take you to get to that friend's house or actually find that friend. Chances are you likely wouldn't, because it's an enormous state. You'd be spending a lot of time driving around, and you might find them eventually, but it would take a very long time. Now imagine how that would be different if I said, hey, I want you to go visit this friend, and here's their exact address. Here's the street number, here's the street, here's the county, here's the city that they live in. You'd be able to drive straight there much faster. And it's the same idea with how we vision, how we set things. The clearer that we are, the more specific that we are in outlining and detailing the vision of what we want to create in our businesses, the faster it will happen. Specificity breeds speed. It's the difference between saying, hey, I want to make $100,000 next year by the end of the year versus I want to make more money next year. I want to make more money is very unclear. And specificity, being very clear and articulate, detailed in how you vision, is actually an organizing function. Meaning that when you're super specific, it becomes much clearer the action that you need to be in and what you need to do in order to go out and create said result. So it's second reasoning why visioning correctly is super important, because specificity breeds speed. This will rapidly elevate your business if you are visioning correctly. Last piece here is if you are playing a big game in your life and your business, and I hope if you're watching this, you are, meaning you're trying to do things that nobody has ever done before. You're trying to stretch yourself outside of your comfort zone. You're trying to create a life that's truly worthy of you. Doing that is scary. Doing that will require you to step out of your comfort zone and get uncomfortable again and again and again and again. And unless we're clear on why we're doing that, unless we're really emotionally connected to why we're doing something, we're more likely to stop. We're more likely to give up. So creating specificity and clarity in our vision actually allows us to stay enrolled and stay motivated in the pursuit of what we want. Julian says, also a detailed plan for it. 100%. 100. Let me throw your comment up here. Thanks so much, Julian. $100,000 divided by average client value equals number of clients you need to make that. 100%. I love that, Julian. Thank you so much for sharing. We've got the clear end goal. I want to make $100,000 in the next year. And the best part about that is because you have that clarity, you then get to break down, okay, here's how it's going to happen. Or here are the ways in which this thing can start to happen. Versus, I want to make more money. How do we actually get there? Thanks for sharing, Julian. Brilliant. So actually visioning correctly allows you to step into a design role, not a default role. When you're specific and clear, it breeds speed. You're going to get there faster. You're going to accelerate and be able to achieve your goals more rapidly. And you'll stay motivated and enrolled because you are emotionally connected to what you're creating. You're emotionally connected to that end vision. And what I find like I mentioned earlier, is that often we run into some roadblocks or obstacles with how we vision. And so I want to talk a little bit about some of the mistakes that we make when we're visioning and some things to look out for as you're practicing this and getting better at this. So some common mistakes. The first is we oftentimes use visioning, and I would say goal setting as well, to fix problems. Here's what I mean by that. A really common goal for people is to lose weight. So people will say, I want to lose 10 pounds, I want to lose 20 pounds, etc. But when you look at what's driving that vision, when you look at what's driving that goal, often it's a sense of lack. It's a sense of unworthiness. It's a sense of there is something wrong with me. There's something wrong with my current situation. And so therefore, I'm going to set a goal or create this vision in order to fix it. It's a fear-based vision or a fear-based goal. And when you think about the energy of that, the experience of trying to achieve a vision that's based in fear, it doesn't feel very good. And likely you've had experiences in the past where you've done something along these lines. New Year's resolutions are usually a pretty good place to look for these. You set a vision based in you feeling that something is wrong or that there's a problem. So you create a vision, and then it usually doesn't work, or it doesn't stick, or the process of and the experience of actually going out and achieving that vision doesn't feel very good. So we want to be really cognizant when we're creating a vision, which we'll talk about here in a minute, that we're not using it to fix problems or to try and solve a fear, so to speak. So that's the first mistake, using visioning to fix problems. The second is we'll create a vision that has no emotional connection. We'll sit down to vision, we'll sit down to think about what do I want to create over the course of the next year. And we'll come up with all these things that sound really great. I want more clients, I want more money, I want more of this or that. And often I find that it's setting a vision more from a place of what sounds good or what sounds logical, but it's not inspiring. We don't feel emotionally connected to it. We can't actually feel it in our body, in our gut. And when we do this, when we set a vision that doesn't have any emotional connection, we're not likely to actually stay with it. Similar to how we talked about previously. In order to stay enrolled and stay motivated, we need to be emotionally connected to what we're creating. A good way to do this is through desire, which we'll talk about here in a bit as we talk about more tangible tips and strategies to create these visions. This is another common mistake, not actually being emotionally connected to the vision that we're creating. So it's not likely to stick around. Or the last piece is just not doing it at all. Just literally not doing it at all. I find this happens a lot with most people because most of us are living life as a series of reactions. We are reacting to things. There's not a whole lot of intentionality or proactivity that's going into getting clear on where do I want to be a year from now. If you don't have that vision, it's almost like you are a boat at sea without a destination. And all that's going to happen is you're just going to get pulled around by the current. You'll go wherever the ocean wants you to go. In your life, if you don't have a vision, you'll go wherever circumstances want you to go. You'll go wherever your parents or your family or your community or your wife or your husband or other people want you to go. If you're not intentionally building this vision of where you're headed, you are out of the driver's seat. You are sitting firmly in the passenger seat and letting circumstances dictate where you end up and how things go. So those are the three big mistakes. Either using it to fix a problem because we feel like something is wrong. We don't have an emotional connection to the vision that we're creating. It just sounds nice, or it sounds right, or it sounds logical, or we don't do it at all. Just literally don't do it. So I want to talk now about some more practical tips and strategies, things that you can actually use in using visioning to accelerate your results and accelerate your business. So the first tip is, like I mentioned earlier, lead with desire, not with logic. The interesting part about being a coach is that I get firsthand experience in understanding how people set goals and how people create visions of what they want. And I would say that far and away, most of us are actually out of touch with desire, which is the sense of wanting something, the sense of wanting to obtain or achieve or experience something, that heart-based, soul-based, gut-based experience, that emotional connection to an experience or a set of results. We're very largely disconnected from those things, which makes sense. We're not often taught to get in touch with those parts of ourselves. Often we are taught to lead with logic, to lead with our head, to lead with rational thinking, which is great. And it definitely has its place. But when it comes to unscripting yourself, when it comes to creating an experience of life that is truly your own, that feels authentic, that feels exciting, that feels joyful, that you really love, that experience does not come about through rational, prioritizing rational thinking. It comes from desire. It comes from actually getting in touch with our gut and asking ourselves, what do I care most about in my business, in my life, in my relationships? Do I really want a ton of clients? Genuinely, not rationally, do I want a ton of clients? From a place of desire in my gut, do I want a bunch of clients? Or do I want a smaller practice so that I can have the experience of my business that I want and serve people in the way that I want to? Neither of those is right or wrong. But one, where you go with rational thinking and you get a bunch of clients, leads to an experience that you don't really like. Or the second, where you actually check in with your gut, check in with desire, leads you to the experience that you do actually want. So as you're thinking about visioning, as you're thinking about creating a new vision and picture of what you want to create in your business, lead with desire. Leave logic at the door for the time being. It'll be really helpful in actually going out and executing and creating it. But when you're thinking about what you want, check in with yourself. Feel it in your gut. If you're coming up with a vision and you don't get butterflies in your stomach, it's not based in enough desire. So that's the first step. Lead with desire, not with logic. Second is focus on the experience, not the results. So I work with a lot of people who both own businesses, but also want to own businesses. So I work with a lot of people who are in corporate currently, and they want to leave and start their own business or just get another job. And here's what I'll say as far as visioning and getting clear on what you do want. Often, we will first and foremost focus on the results instead of the experience. And here's what I mean by that. If we were looking for a job, for example, we might say, oh, well, I know that I want a sales job, and I know I want to work in this industry, and I think I want to work in this geographic location. We're super focused on the results, the tangible, measurable, observable results, that we lose sight of the thing that we actually care about. Because ultimately, we don't care what the job is. Same thing in our business. We don't care the way that our business is configured or who we're working with. What we care about is the experience. What we care about is who do we get to be inside of that job or inside of that business. What's our experience like on a day-to-day basis as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, inside of that business? Who do we get to be? How do I get to feel? Do I get to have the time and energy and freedom that I want? Because there's a lot of things that I really love doing. And there's a limitless number of different configurations, business configurations that we could put together in order to create what we really want. But when we get focused on the results, when we get focused on how it's supposed to look or how we want it to look, we end up getting stopped. Another way to think about this is the life that you want to build is a mountain. There's a lot of different ways to get up the mountain. But if we say this is the only way, the one way to get up the mountain, the result, focus on the result, then we stop. Versus, hey, let me keep my mind open. Let me keep my brain open. I'm going to focus on the experience at the summit, at the peak, and I'm just going to figure out what's the best way to go out and create that. So ultimately, focus on the experience, not on the results. Julian says, I call this activity focused instead of results focused. Really good advice to focus on what we do, not what we'll get. Love that, Julian. Yeah, totally agreed. Thanks so much for sharing that. So third and final tip with visioning, start small and build. Because what I find is that in this conversation around visioning what we really want and creating something new, oftentimes it feels overwhelming. It's like, wow, there's so much that I want, or there's so much that I could create that I don't even really know where to start. And we get so overwhelmed at the idea of creating this vision that we don't start. We just say, oh, I'll come back to it later. I'll figure this out later. I'll have this conversation with myself later. So when you're thinking about putting this vision together, my suggestion and encouragement is to start small. So if you don't have this yet, I would highly encourage you to create an account or invest in a software like Evernote, OneNote, Notion is also a really great program. Some sort of program or hardcover journal, if that's your thing, where you can start to keep track of and consolidate all the ideas around what you want to create for yourself. I personally love the electronic version. It's just so much easier to copy, paste, and move things around. And what you can do is actually just sit down and ask yourself, what do I know that I want? And start with bullet points. Literally just start with bullet points, bullet pointing out, here's what I want, here's what I want, here's what I want. Here's, this experience. This is a facet of what I want to create. Once you have bullets, then just expand them into sentences. Add a little bit more flavor, add a little bit more context, add a little bit more detail. And what you'll find is as you go through that process of expanding and fleshing out and really sitting with and putting yourself in the position of you having already accomplished those experiences and results, you'll find that in building that muscle, it'll become so much easier to conjure up the vision very quickly instead of feeling overwhelmed or instead of feeling like you don't really know where to start. So that's all I got for you today. Really hope that was supportive, practical, pragmatic, tangible, and supports you in getting clear on what you want over the course of the next year. Because I think, in so many ways, visioning and doing it correctly is a total game changer. It'll have you achieving what you want that much more rapidly, and actually having you creating your own life in a much cooler and much easier fashion. Like always, this is a lot of the work that I do with folks. So if it's ever of interest to have a conversation around this, if you find yourself struggling with really identifying and articulating like, hey, here's what I want, here's what I want to create for myself in terms of experience and results, please reach out to me. Let's have a conversation about it. And if you're interested in getting together with a community of people who really care about topics like this, who want to talk about these things, who want to connect with each other, support each other, would highly encourage you to come and check out Business Unscripted, which is a networking series that I run bi-weekly. We just had the first one today. It was awesome. We had Veronica Jans come on. She talked about operations, digital operations for small businesses. It was incredible. Really great group of people. We have our next one on the 25th of this month, August 25th. They're Wednesdays, 12 to 1. I'll drop the link to register in the comments of this video. Otherwise, would love to hear if you have any questions, if you have any comments, anything that you took from this video and this topic. Would love to hear it. But regardless, I will see you next week.